clean. Now I'm back in scene. I don't know what just happened to my video, but we back.
We back now.
But
That's
everything's
fine.
going good, man. Yeah, I'm in a good spot down here in the Zen Cave, holding it down. Looking forward to this conversation today, man. It has been on my spirit all week for a lot of different reasons. So I'm glad we're gonna get to put this into the atmospheres and let these ethers burn a little bit with regards to this
Exactly.
cultural talk, man. Um, how you feeling, bro?
Well, reporting live. Hey, what's going on? Live from Southern Canada, essentially. Like 3 hours south of Montreal. It's ridiculous. But nah, man,
Word.
like feeling good, feeling energized, feeling empowered. I feel like, I've had this like hunch for a while now about that whole statement of like, oh, okay, cool. So we're the new ancestors, act accordingly. And as like more and more elders continue to transition, it's like, oh, okay. So I guess it's time to
Yeah,
like let scale the work up, not so much get to work because we've been in this for a second, but
right.
I think just take it to a new level and see like, all right, where is that space that we have to contribute our verse to this
Mm.
this grand mixtape that we call life.
Listen, man, on all fronts, all accords, absolutely
Exactly.
100% feel you, man. Down to literally this morning, some stuff got laid in my lap where it was like,
Yeah,
you gonna step up or you gonna step off. You know what you're
that's
supposed to
it.
do. And so
But
yes, as we often say, yes.
exactly, that's the question and the answer.
But yeah, but so we can get into this. First and foremost, honor, respect, and gratitude to the new ancestor that is Comrade John Lewis,
Yes, and
the
CT
brother that
Vivian
is
because they died on the same day.
Tadao. And there was a lot of connections between those two brothers. But yeah,
Yep,
CT Vivian, John Lewis, um, we got some new power that's coming back into the
exactly,
universe. And so as they leave, their spirits are now available to come back to us. So
exactly,
we mourn the passing of their flesh. We are excited for the resurrection of their spirit. So we here
exactly.
with that.
The day of
Um,
Nelson Mandela's birthday. Just so we're clear.
just so we clear and to make it
Just so
further,
we
further,
clear.
further grounded and rooted in your reality.
Yeah, man.
Um, but yeah, man. And before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to my homies over at Free Breakfast Apparel up in Chi Town, the only clothing line with a 10-point plan. As we always do, we like to highlight Black and
Mhm.
Brown and women entrepreneurs on the scene. So I got to give love to them first. To kick us off, all right, we here for the DMA for the culture. So the first thing, of course, is always right grounding where we sit and where we stand in this conversation around divine
Boom.
masculinity. Um, and so divine masculine activated is designed to give you the strategies, the tools, the boundaries, and the principles necessary for you to figure out how to balance your masculine energy without sacrificing your feminine energy.
Ta-da.
And of course, the quick add to that is that when we talk about masculine and feminine, we are not talking about male, female, heterosexual normatives of any kind. We are simply talking about the energetic dynamics that exist within all human beings and how, as human beings, we display those energies through who we are as people or who we are as an individual, right? Set that groundwork first before we get into
Lay
it.
that flat. So now that you know why we're here,
Uh-huh.
let's get to the antics. So DMA for the culture, quick little backdrop to get y'all up to speed, was we were sitting back and we wanted to think about like number one, how did we get to the point that we were at? And what were the primary influences outside of the basics, like your parentals, the people down the street, so
Mm,
on and so forth. Like, but when you turn on television, like I mean, we had the Huxtables, we had Mr. Cooper, so to speak, and a few others. But like, how many of those examples on TV were really in line with divine masculine principles versus
woo,
them just sort of looking like they were in a good position because by comparison, the alternative was kind of trash. So
talk about it.
exactly. And I think it's time to have this conversation because I think sisters have been having it for a long time anyway, as per usual. They
Mm,
typically do things first.
mm,
We wanted to bring this to the forefront so then we can really, really dissect this and break it down so that it forever remains broke. Um, exactly. Yeah. So we challenged a few of our tribe to submit some of their ideas and suggestions for
mm.
who makes the cut on their roster, and hopefully they are all engaging now because I'm excited to have this dialogue about
Yes,
who makes
indeed.
the cut and who don't.
Yes, indeed. So to get us into it, with no further ado, while we talk about divine masculine activator for the culture, and we are talking about Black popular culture, a large part of that sphere encompasses film, right?
Yeah.
So yes, when we look at Black popular culture, we're talking about music, we're talking about uh, civil rights, we're talking about kings, queens, pharaohs, whatever you want to go into. But for popular culture, the way it exists where we are,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna start right here. Where it started for me.
Toms, coons, mulattoes, mammies, and bucks. An interpretive
That
history of blacks in American films by Donald Bogle.
let's
Peep
get
it.
into it. Senior year at Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, I
Strike.
decided to take an elective called Blacks in Film. Now, for me, I was like, bet I'm gonna get to study Do the Right Thing. She's got to have it. All of these different films that I grew up loving. I got
No,
into the
you're gonna
class the
study
first day.
Birth of a Nation.
You're gonna study that. You're gonna study Uncle Tom's Cabin. You're gonna study
Yeah.
Oscar Micheaux, who, if you don't know who that is, like if you think Tyler Perry is that deal in terms of what he's able to create and produce, go look up Oscar Micheaux, the Tyler Perry before there was Tyler Perry. And so this book, for me specifically, like helped ground a lot of what I grew up in, as a hip hop kid. Like I never really knew where a lot of the images that I looked up to came from or how they were originated. And so this book breaks that down, right? And so when you look at the Tom, the Coon, Mulatto, Mammy, and the Buck, these characters still get portrayed till this day. Till this day.
Till this
They
day.
may till this day. Now they may not be stepping and fetching, shout out stepping fetches, but they are still portrayed in terms of the boxes that we pull
Mm-hmm.
off the shelf and then we give to whoever is making a film to say, all right, this is that character and this is how they must show up. So just to ground us really quick before we get into this, I wanted to read something from the book that I thought was extremely powerful. And it said, they sat like square boxes on a shelf. A white actor walked by, selected a box, and used it as a base for a very square, rigidly defined performance. Later, when real black actors played the roles and found themselves wedged in these categories, the history became one of actors battling against the types to create rich, stimulating, diverse characters. All right. So, even from the inception of this thing we call pop culture or movies or entertainment or
Mm-hmm.
cinema,
It was
you've got this
propaganda.
construct, you've got propaganda, man. You've
Mm-hmm.
got, as we like to call, static, right?
And I think
And
beyond
so,
that, to reinforce it, the notion that like the technology they used to film with, like the notion of
mhm,
darker skin tones reflecting light versus lighter skin tones that absorb it. What that
that's right.
does is I mean, everybody who is beyond a certain hue is never really going to look that good on camera.
Nope.
And that's
Mm-mm. And
before we
in
even get
terms,
into the
yeah,
blackface and the other problematic details. But it's its own
exactly.
universe.
Yep. Which is its own point because when you look at the first film to ever be put out on the large screen, Uncle Tom's Cabin, the
Mm-hmm.
main character, Uncle Tom, is a white man in blackface. So,
Yes.
like, even from jump, we're looking at this thing from a perspective that ain't even fully giving it its depth and its due. And not to mention the gender-based aspects of this thing with regards
Mm-hmm.
to how masculine characters and how feminine characters were forced to be depicted when you got into, the Hattie McDaniels of the world, where when you look at her body of work, oh, she always played a mammy, she always played a cook,
Mm-hmm.
but in every single movie she was in, she had manicured fingernails. That was her way of letting you know, like, you may see me as one thing, but these hands ain't touched the pot in years. She was working that life the way she needed to. And so again, I'm sorry. Without further ado, now because we needed that to
We
ground us,
did.
right?
No. We got to get you up to speed. You know what I mean? We got to get up to speed.
Yeah. So at this point, I think the conversation is going to be really about breaking barriers, creating new
Mm-hmm.
norms, and like you said, JD, like getting into like, all right, who these are our heroes, right? To quote Nas, because we hip hop kids,
Exactly.
we gonna do this every single episode.
Every single
Um,
episode. We made it 12 minutes in, by the way. So
we did
shouts
right.
out to
I tried
us.
my
Normally
best.
we drop 3 by minute 6.
So look at it like that, right? So like, who are our heroes? Where do we want to start with this thing? I think we'll get into that list that we got from our tribe, but like the first movie that comes to mind for me is Juice, simply
Yes.
because as a young man, I
Mm-hmm.
saw several depictions of manhood in that one movie, going from still all the way up to, I can't remember his name, but the character Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, the Word Man. Like he
The
was.
Word Man.
I don't know what his. I
Right.
forgot what his name was, but he was. The cat with his ear to the street all the time.
Who, in essence, was the kind of like the linchpin in the film, because when GQ goes to get the heat, who does he go to ask to? You know what I'm saying? He's like, "Yo, I need you to set something up for me," and he knows that this man can broker that, right? So, I guess we should start there with these main characters. You got GQ, and you got Bishop. Who you rocking with?
It's the obvious answer is the obvious answer, and you know the way that I'm wired as a natural dissenter. I want to play devil's advocate, and like I'm gonna just roll with Bishop. I already know we about to hit a wall with this, but I'm gonna roll with Bishop because I have two good points. That doesn't overshadow the other 10 that debunk them, but I'm gonna roll with my 2.
Let's get it. And I'm gonna try to check our line to see like who jumps in with you on this point.
Exactly. I'm sure not many people will, but that's fine. I'm a ride. All right, so Bishop, here's why. So specifically the moment when he corners Q in the hallway, and he has like he realizes that like he gets real with his own story, and here's why.
Yeah.
So he's like, "You called me crazy. When you called me that, I felt some sort of way about it." Exactly. But you know what? I've done some soul searching, and I actually am crazy. And I think the sheer ownership of that. So now it's like, so now that we've established that I'm about this life, and regardless of like how low my self-esteem is because of the environment that we grew up in, like because of the way that ego works, like I still think I'm more of a man than you. So the second I decide that you ain't it, then you're target number 2. And he stayed consistent through the rest of the film. Like he didn't try to jump ship when he found out that it wasn't going to end well. He fully like embraced it. And that's actually speaking from a place of sovereignty. And I sort of like honor that for what it is, even though I don't necessarily think it should be like supported or replicated. Like at the end of the day, like he planted his flag and he rode for what he said he believed in. So that counts for consistency. You know what?
As I would, of course, in this moment, try to create the argument for GQ to be seen as the divine masculine in this sense, I'm gonna let this one cook and ride right there with you. Mostly because I know, right, like looking forward and being the movie culture nerd that I am, like I know movies like this influenced the young Black directors of today.
Exactly.
When you look at a Ryan Coogler director, producer of Black Panther, right, and the influences that went into his mind when he had the opportunity to create or recreate the character of Killmonger.
Exactly.
Like I see a whole lot of Bishop in Killmonger. You dig?
Tons of it. Tons of it.
What's more, I see a whole lot of Bishop in Killmonger's father, Njobu, right? When you get to the beginning of the movie, in terms of like, how do we even get to this point where like there was a T'Chaka and there was T'Challa, right? The point is, it starts with Njobu. It starts with Killmonger's father and how he was here. He was placed here for a mission, and he was in the hood banging
and
with
he was
us.
Exactly.
Yep.
Which he touches on another topic with regard to diaspora relations that we're gonna save for another episode. We don't need to get into that right now.
But that right there, man, that to me speaks volumes in terms of like this man was principled enough to go against his country, against where he was birthed from, against the core of his mission, for the fact that he realized that there were others like him in this diaspora that needed their assistance, and he was willing to die for it, and he did. And so was his son, right? And so now it starts to make me think about like, where do we get into the dynamics of how that goes left? Because Bishop, Killmonger, and Njobu all went left. But when do we see it go right or go forward the way it's supposed to from a divine masculine perspective?
Well, now we're getting into good trouble.
There we go. This is good trouble. John Lewis once again.
Exactly.
For those that don't know that reference, because we throw stuff out there and don't always articulate where we got it from. Well, we know, and now you know too. But you know. where we can go next with it. And I'm moving through these kind of quickly just because there's so many references. I just want to weave the tapestry of what we're talking about with pop culture, right? For
Exactly.
me, it takes us to Coming to America, which gets into my number one male divine masculine. And I'm gonna do this and circle back because Okoye from Black Panther is my number two top of my three, but she's a female divine
I'm
masculine.
really excited about getting into that.
I can't wait to get back to her, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna let her breathe because I've said it, I put it into the
Mm-hmm.
atmosphere, and I'm gonna get to Prince Akeem before
Facts.
we get back to Okoye.
Yeah.
But looking at Prince Akeem, man, like it's a beautiful example of when it is a necessity to move past your father's regality, right? There is
Mm-hmm.
no question that King Joffrey Joffa was that dude. You ain't
Off the
never seen
voice
nobody.
alone.
Listen, you ain't never seen nobody able to pet a lion with diamonds in his eyes on his shoulder the way this man did. He walks on petals of roses. And imagine like that's how you grow up, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the whole point of the beginning of the movie, while it was very comical in terms of this man was 21 years old and never wiped his own backside. Like that's real in terms of what he was born into. This man was never uh, removed from his regality as a black man. He knew exactly who he was, but he also saw some inherent issues with the way things operated, and he chose to move against and go against the grain rather than just go along with what he saw. Um, and I think there were some real aspects of colorism, and this kind of gets into like who actually directed Coming to America. Because you look at the
Mm-hmm.
differentiation of the characters in terms of who he was gifted with as a wife and who he chose as a wife, there's some differences between those two women, and I think
We could
that's
get into
telling
that
as well.
nuance for sure.
Yeah, we can, but I won't get too deep into that because I want to stay on him as a character because
Yes.
that's a whole nother conversation. But he chose to go against his father, his country, his inheritance. Because at one point, this man was like, "Yo, I'll renounce my throne for this because I can
Which,
build a whole new one with you."
yeah, that's cool and everything. I'm gonna keep buying inheritance though, shorty. Like, it's
Look
like
perfect.
what is your
Um,
401k situation? I don't know
That
about that,
yeah,
but
and like I would have never jumped off the ship to begin with. Like as soon as Shotty came out there like this,
that would have been
I'd have been
it.
like, "Pops, we good. I'm straight."
Well, considering the fact that Pop slept with his bathers, but that's another because that was a slick, that was a minor detail he slept in, and that's what kind of took him off the shelf for me because it was like, oh yeah, that
Yes.
dude, like that they got real
Yeah.
Game of Thrones for a second, whereas Akeem was willing to chart his own path, and that's where he
Mm,
obviously wins because he stepped outside of the comfort zone, moved around, and in the midst of perceived poverty, because you know the Queen situation he was chilling in,
yes,
like it was
indeed.
it was 1980s Queens. Forget all that.
Yeah.
Like he eschewed comfort and still maintained principle. And lack of perceived resources is a major excuse that a lot of people use to like
Mm,
eschew their principles or morality for the sake of survival. So I think that's what
that's
makes him
true.
stick out to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I dig it. And there were a couple other characters in the movie too, right? When you look at John Amos's character, who played Mr. McDowell, right?
Yeah,
Kind of the old guard, so to speak. Like we didn't really see a
definitely
lot
the old
about
guy.
his 1-2 step that got him to own McDowell's restaurant. But like we all knew from watching this joint that this man was doing something radical, owning a McDowell's when like he was like, are those people from McDonald's? Right? Like he knew he was inherently creating static with his brand having the golden arcs as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the golden arches. And so there was a quality of divine masculine in him to set up a standard of like, this is what my family is built on. I built
Mm-hmm.
this legacy.
No, that was
Now,
full
of course,
magician archetype. Full magician.
Tadeo, which is beautiful. And I think that that circles back perfectly to Okoye because there was an inherent level of regal magician in her that was just like inherent. You know, to be a general that was commanding that level of force for Wakanda, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that one scene where, you know, the battle's breaking on and my man's charging with the rhino, and she simply just stands there and knows that this rhino is not finna go through her, regardless of what uh, the the command has been given from the person who probably raised this rhino. Because you know she probably wasn't doing that work, but this
No.
rhino knew what was up. And then you know he pulls his John out talking about, oh, so you would kill me, my love, and she hits him with the illest line of all time. for Wakanda without
Without
question.
question.
And
And
that
ups
right
the llama
there,
on him. Like
that right there, like I'm gonna hold it on you. And you could see it in her spirit. And I love the way they depicted her facial expression in that moment because she held it, but you saw her brow kind of change
like just so we're clear.
he hesitated. Like we hear, I really don't want to do this to you, but I will if I have to. In that moment, along with several other moments, like when she told, you know what I'm saying, Black Panther, like, yo, when you see her, don't freeze.
Don't freeze.
She was giving game right and left. And then, when he did freeze, she was right there to come down and handle business because things would have went differently. She would have never come down there in the opening scene. But that for me is especially from the perspective of how we often can pigeonhole masculinity into an aspect of a warrior, right? To see that exuded in a woman and have it not be distorted in terms of who she chooses to be, right? She chose her principles. She chose her allegiances. And she was just as soft as she probably needed to be when she was in her spaces that were her spaces. But she was principled to who she chose to be. And I think that for me is why she makes my list, why she's my number 2 top divine masculine in the pop culture for all those things.
Well, yeah, because it's movements over moments, right? And I think part of the divine masculine detail is purpose over everything. Even those who I love, like, because this wasn't just some dude she was feeling. Like, no. She loved this man.
Yes, indeed.
With a passion, and she was willing to put her feelings to the side for the sake of maintaining her station, like her mantle. And that's a very, very strong pillar. Not everybody can do that. Which brings me to my next piece, which is I want to go and take it all the way left, stepping outside of the realm of cis hetero men with Little Richard.
Let's get it. Yes,
because that's just
on your list.
Exactly.
Yo, when you put it on there, I was like, okay, yes, this is going to be fun.
This is going to be very fun because, like, obviously, like, we got to take into account the fact that number one, this wasn't a fictional reality, and then number two, he was out in the 50s, so on the Chitlin circuit at that. So the fact that he was able to retain any level of, I think, identity with his sexuality while still trying to maintain that weird balancing act with like devout Christianity.
Speak about it.
I understand the cognitive dissonance, so I definitely don't hold him to that. If anything, like he definitely stood his guns. Like,
yes, he did.
He mentioned the fact in his story that, like, look, man, I've been wearing my mom's clothes on the low since I was at least 15 years old, and this is just what's happening. But also, I think having to contend with that direct challenge on a regular basis, like he's performing on the Chitlin circuit in the 50s. Wasn't nothing for a gunfight to break out in the middle of a concert in a crowded juke joint.
At all.
That's just how they was getting down. So he was moving through life like that while still owning so much of his like intellectual property and maintaining some level of control over his money, even to the point where he gave Muddy Water some game. So,
man, I'm so glad you said that piece of the puzzle because Little Richard often gets put into this like bubble as if he was by himself during that time. Like,
no,
if he wasn't riding and interacting with others. So yes, absolutely.
But that's what I got with it. If anything, I'm curious to see what a lot of our viewers have to say regarding their picks. And by all means, feel free to throw them in the chat so we can pull them up. We got them in the list, but we just want to see your lovely faces in our live comment section.
They perked in principle regardless. There was one that let me pull up the list because it was crazy how long it was.
Well, Darius from Love Jones, Denzel from Mo Better Blues, and Morris Chestnut from Best Man.
Well, somebody first said Morris Chestnut in any role that he plays in, which I can't say that I agree with that, but for the purpose of like who he is as a person, like, okay, I see where you're going with that one. But I guess one that I would love to get into is Darius Love Hall from Love Jones, because as a lot of us, like I grew up eating that movie as if it was the most beautiful thing in this world. And that part, so what we got? Sleep on Richard, people sleep on Little Richard, absolutely. But looking at his character, hindsight as an adult, with the experiences that I've had in terms of relationship dynamics, I'm not sure I could really consider Darius a divine masculine. I don't think at any point in the movie, I'm taking my patience with this so I can see the movie roll out in my head. But I can't really think of a point in the movie where he exhibited any of the qualities we normally talk about with regards to divine masculinity, right? Like he didn't necessarily have a sense of belief that was grounded in the higher power.
Nope.
His principles were always pretty shaky. He put a lot of things before himself, and I think that was a lot of the reason why he ended up with the things he received, because they were reflections of what he was putting out to the universe.
And his hairline was questionable at best.
Did he have a hairline?
That's sort of my point. Like that tape up was like, come on, bro. Like you couldn't get it.
Like, those were ancestral natural root lines. Like nobody put a blade to that head in a good long time.
Yeah, but no blade plus cancer sticks. I think that's a dangerous combination.
That's a horrible combination.
Exactly.
But I will say this: so in that same movie, right? Because you've got several masculine characters.
Facts.
And I can't remember my man's name at this moment, but he is the one who was like, "Romance is dead," is what they said, sitting around cheating in the pool. That character, he was to me the most divine masculine character in the movie, because my man was always
consistent,
killed, consistent.
Yeah, the ball-headed cat.
Play.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. And he could play when he needed to play, like be playful, right? So the whole conversation around, when a man gets a hard on, where the blood comes from.
Exactly.
He was fully in that cipher, right? Fully into it, playing around, kicking it with the game. But when it was time to give advice, i.e., when him and Darius are sitting on the beach and he's telling them, love is what you make and with whom you make it, right? Physics, this shit ain't, was one of the famous lines that I think he said. That was divine masculine game. Like that was what I wanted to see from Darius. My hindsight self, like me today, I wish I saw that from Darius. Because I think it would have been a totally different storyline to see him really just be like, "Look, shawty," and he said it to her up front. He was like, "This here is a destiny thing," but then he just didn't live by it. Like, when
he still ran.
To go to New York. Yeah, like you about to go to New York and see old boy? No, you not. Not if you want to come back here. You can go. You are free to go, but don't come back.
Right. You got to stick to your guns. You got to stay consistent.
That's it, man. But I wanted to let that one breathe, just because, like, growing up and even in undergrad, like the amount of times that I sat and watched Love Jones, the amount of lines, like I have memorized the entire A Blues for Nina.
Of course.
Like,
because why would you not? In undergrad?
Why would I not?
That's gonna work. That's
right.
You can't miss that shot.
You can't, and you're never gonna spit the whole piece to a woman if
you don't need to.
That's a problem. But you can hit her with a one-liner and the whole game changes.
What? Talk about that left knee.
Oh man, it was good work.
Exactly.
But keeping it in the love space, right? Because we had another character in that same vein. My man Tea Cake from Their Eyes Were Watching God.
You know how I felt about this
specifically Tea Cake before the rabies. So I'm gonna let you get
pre-rabies Tea Cake.
Pre-rabies.
Of course, man. Like, number one. That's funny. I was passing through what's left of Eatonville a few weeks ago when I was down in the crib, and things have not panned out fortuitously for that space. That kind of hurts my heart. Yeah, man. But yeah, so Tea Cake, first and foremost, like, let's talk about the comparison between the book to the movie, because in the book, Tea Cake was like my complexion or darker.
Yes, he was. Yep.
And then they hit us with the Michael Ealy in the film. Nothing against Michael Ealy.
But we know.
Against Michael Ealy, but we know. So beyond that, I think Tea Cake, number one, other than being, you know what I'm saying, slicker than a can of oil, I think his inherent reverence for the main character that Halle Berry played, like her space and her sovereignty. Like, there was obviously like the physical attraction and the lust detail, but there was a grand respect.
Absolutely.
And from that one scene where he popped up the next day, it was like, well, I wanted to share some of my daytime thoughts with me, with you, just because you don't have the nighttime ones. You know what I'm
slick
saying?
Move there, brother.
Very slick move, bro.
Solid.
That's A1 game. But then also, I think the small things, like the way that they would sort of tic-tac with the power dynamic and gender roles that were like a stark contrast to her previous marriage. Because before it was very hierarchical. Like, I'm here, I'm the head, you take this, shut up, put on this corset. bring my dinner by this time. I don't want to hear nothing until I die. Whereas with tea cake, it was like, nah, shout it, like, I'm gonna make you fish. Like, well, we're gonna go fish. I'm gonna teach you to fish.
Together.
Fish together. Exactly. And we're gonna sit here under this bright Florida sky around this time of year. You know what I'm saying? And we just gonna listen to music and we gonna eat this fish on the porch. Like, you're the one that has the bigger inheritance because you're a widow. Like, you the one with the bread, shout it. I ain't even tripping. If anything, the one like blemish she had for real was the fact that he gambled away their money. But you know, apparently that's what it was there back then. So
that's what they did. But I feel that completely, man. 100%. So like, yeah, tea cake was the embodiment of you should let me love you, because you don't have to. You could choose any of these suitors out here, but you should let me do it. And here's why. And I think it definitely overshadows when we often talk about divine masculine energy. Its inherent secondariness to divine feminine energy. Like, please believe, like, let it be said, we don't hold this space because we believe that divine masculinity should be in the forefront. We hold it because it's been forgotten about. However, divine femininity comes first. We all come from source, then to a woman who births us. Everybody on this planet.
Yeah. So you all start out with the XX. Concept, you get the Y chromosome after.
I wasn't even gonna take it to that scientific part of it, but yes, we all start off female in inherently how this thing works. And so I think that is to be respected with regards to our relationship dynamics and how we look at our roles, right? One of the things that I loved about Tea Cake is that he was cool being principled where he was at, but he was also cool letting her lead with regards to the things she was more principled or more known in, right? Like, he didn't feel the need to be like, all right, now that I got you, let's do this my way.
No.
Like, he still stayed true to game till he got the rabies, man.
And that was trying to help her. Listen, ain't nothing. This is so let this be a lesson, bro. When the Seminoles are leaving because they say it's a hurricane coming, follow the Seminoles.
Follow suit, brother. That is the time to be like, listen, lady, I love you, but it's time for us.
But we got to get this on the road. We got
to get up out of here, because I'm not trying to get bitten by no random animal saving you, and then I'm done and you done because we ain't together no more because I'm out of here. But that character of TK and that relationship dynamic, what he stood for in that space, it brings me to another great one who's very, very hot right now, Stoney. Jada Pinkett Smith set it off. My goodness, if there was not a time period where I was in love with that woman, it was that time.
Don't get tangled. Don't get tangled. Don't do it.
But now the character was spot on in every single way, in my opinion, even down to the relationship she had with Blair Underwood, and how she had certain principles and things that she could have let go of because of what he could have given to her in terms of replacing those things that she was working, to free herself from. And I love the exchange that they had when he alluded to it, when they were on the phone and she wasn't saying anything and he knew it was her. And he was putting out there, like, if you need me, like, I can take all of this away and you can just be you. And she chose to ride with her tribe. She chose to set it off.
Yeah,
with her sister.
Indeed.
And she didn't have to, man. She did not have to. But even in the way she did it, she kept everybody accountable. Like, she wasn't finna let Cleo act a fool because Cleo liked to act a fool. She was still gonna hold her accountable. And we all know when she slapped Cleo in the face, she was gonna get her stuff rocked. That's why she picked up that bottle, because like Cleo Queen Latifah would have put her through a wall.
Character or otherwise.
Otherwise. But that
Queen Latifah will whoop both eyes, just so we're clear.
Highly likely, yes.
Yeah.
But that character Stoney was a divine masculine, or exuded divine masculine energy throughout the movie. Set it off. Even in the beginnings, where she was trying to give her brother the game he needed, to ascend past the points he was at, and he didn't, unfortunately, because of one of the things that we still with today, which is police killing Black people. So as you see in these episodes, we flow through all these themes, and we still have these undercurrents of like, we understand what's going on, and we're going to give you some breaks from reality without letting you break from reality.
Not
that's
fully.
What we're really here for.
Exactly.
So yeah, where you want to go next, bro? If you got one locked in, I'll let
well, somebody he said, how about Claire Huxtable for divine masculinity?
Yo, she did not come through once this week when we were asking for suggestions, but I am so glad she showed up here today in live in real time in real color. I 100% agree. You want to jump into it first?
No. You take this one. I got the last one.
So let's
Actually, no.
get
I
into
lied.
it.
You got the last one. No, let me get into her first.
Yes.
Let me get into her
Yeah.
first. Okay, it is my turn. So, first off, yes.
Absolutely.
What I think with Claire Huxtable, it was that amazing balance of soft power with hard lines and parameters
Yes.
every single time. She
Every
often preferred to like walk softly and carry a big stick, but anytime like there was a major decision, it was that old school situation where pops get asked and then it's like, I don't care, but I don't want to get in trouble. So you're gonna have to go to the kitchen.
My man.
Go to the kitchen and ask your mama. Because if
Ask
she
your
say
mama.
yeah, then it's okay. Because it's one
Then it's
thing for
okay
you
with
to
me.
get in trouble. It's another thing for me to get in trouble.
For
Because she
me
can
to
put
get
me
in
in trouble in ways that you can't get in trouble.
Listen, yo, those parts of it, and I think the one that, of course, everybody's mind goes to is the scene with her and Elton, their eldest daughter's husband, where he says to her, "You know, Mrs. Huxtable, I didn't think you did things like that," and she's like, "Things like what? I didn't think you got coffee for your husband." And she hit him with that smile that only Felicia Rashad could give, boy.
Talk
she
about
was
it.
just like the brow drop that she's like, please continue.
Exactly. It's like, you sweet summer child. Bless your heart. Okay.
Come on. Walk. Look, she hit him with that.
Walk into the trap.
Come on, dude. And then proceeded to give him the most eloquently delicate yet hard real talk that he desperately needed.
Velvety
and so,
coated iron fist.
Iron fist of all kinds. And I think she does that not just in her role as Claire Huxtable, but Felicia Rashad being I consider her one of my divine aunties, even though I don't know her at all. But when you look at her as a woman, how she was raised, when she talks about how she was raised, it's no coincidence that this is how she shows up on film consistently. Even when she was playing the role she played on Empire, where she was definitely not a divine masculine, she still had this air about her that was like,
it's very regal.
Shit, but I'm scared of you, and there's for good reason why I'm scared of you. And yeah, that regality to it, man. I think Felicia Rashad, I would say, as a person, absolutely a divine masculine energy, or knows someone who knows how to harness that energy. But specifically, Claire Huxtable, 100%. And I would even take it further to say, like, the dynamic of their relationship, right? Like,
absolutely,
Mr. Huxtable, right, was very much a divine masculine in his own right. And I think it likely is why that depiction of that relationship holds so solid for people's psyche when it comes to like how we view family dynamics.
Exactly.
You remove the doctor, you remove the lawyer, you remove the brownstone in Brooklyn, like all of these different pieces where
what you done did.
Yeah.
Period.
But like, who were they? How did they operate together? What did they do when they were in their intimate spaces? Right?
Absolutely.
Was that different than what they showed their kids? And I think they were great examples of like, these are what whole humans look like.
Exactly.
There wasn't really a lot of stuff they had to hide from anybody. They could be exactly who they were at all times, up to and including a horrible track and field athlete that just would never let it go. And my man. But they supported each other even in those really just nonsensical times. And the way that Dr. Huxtable would constantly affirm her with his silence sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a very soft-powered dance. He would make some faces, though. The facial expressions were great. But I think it was to the point that I was going to make. You just actually served that up. There seemed to be this mutual understanding of doing right versus being right.
Being right. Yep.
Which is really all about, like, that's a fundamental detail for me in most relationships, but mostly because I have a marriage and I want to keep it. So I had to learn this. So it's to not be a jerk all the time. And it's like, how do I get you to that point of the answer being 2 without telling you that the answer is 2? Because I have to respect your process and let you get there in your own way. Yes.
And the fact that goes both ways.
It definitely goes both ways.
I wouldn't even, and I would even say that both ways relationship isn't balanced, because I would say that they do it way more for us than we do it for them, in terms of them knowing the answer and
Mhm.
letting us take our time to get to it and nudging us patiently and lovingly along the way, right? Like, I've felt that more than I've given that throughout my life. Um, yeah, in any interaction with the divine feminine, like, it's always like, true, true. Yep, you was right. You didn't say it to me, and I appreciate that, but you was right. And I think that's just kind of the way it is at certain times with this piece, the way we at.
Okay. So in that same vein, but definitely not that
Uh,
same method, let's take it to another
ooh,
lovely mom, Florida Evans from Good Times.
flow. Hell, damn.
Because
Okay,
she did
where you
not
want?
get soft power was not her method
Not her thing.
at all.
No, that was not flow.
Okay,
So
so
where you want to take that one?
okay, so with Flo, I actually are we going? Yeah, we're gonna go there. Okay, Flo Evans has several really solid examples of actual like toxic masculinity, because
Definitely.
she definitely threw her weight around, and she used that aspect of like her feminine skills to basically like
Mm,
nag people to her side. Like,
yeah.
what was it? The money that her daughter found, her being with the dude that was gonna
Oh
go
my
to the
gosh.
NFL.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like it was
Yeah. Yeah. I had some other ones pop through, but I was like, I'm not going there. We can hold those spaces sacred for this time period. But definitely Florida Evans, man, was not, in my opinion, an example of divine masculinity. But when you look at John Amos's character in that movie, or in that TV show, so to speak, like, he dealt with his inherent uh, overly masculated aspects of self, which goes directly to one of my favorites, one of my most divine masculine examples, which is James Baldwin,
Mhm.
where he talks about the dynamic of manhood and black masculinity during that time frame and what they were dealing
Exactly.
with, and how each day he had to go out into the world and be demeaned, belittled. He had to dim his light. He had to fit himself into these boxes that inherently went against his genetic code, and then had to come home and try to unbox himself without destroying all that he loved. And there's an incredible interview, you could always find it on YouTube, between Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin, where they
Yep.
kind of go back and forth about that
Sometimes you
conflict.
gotta lie.
And yeah,
Sometimes
man,
you
and
gotta
it's
lie.
and it's it
Fake it
was
till you
crazy
make
to
it.
see Nikki Giovanni say it. She was like, "Yeah, but lie to me. Like,
Mm.
you could go out to the world and tell them, but like, love me the way that I'm showing you, not the way that you feel." And it was like,
Because our
yo,
kids
to
don't know the
hear her,
difference. They're none the
they don't know the
wiser.
difference.
Yeah.
And to hear her articulate it to me, man, was like, even in that scene in the interview where she says it, James Baldwin kind of goes, like, the fuck you just like, oh, word.
Look, you already
Um,
lying to Mr. Man at the job. You smiling in his face all day, and
so
you hate his guts.
exactly. Especially if it's from a construct of like, we're doing this to make it work. Like, we're not really
Exactly.
getting to the mechanisms. We're making it work. So if you're gonna make it work, like,
Make
at
it
least
work.
make it look and feel good.
There we go. Because the kid,
You know
like,
what I'm
they
talking
don't. They
about?
just want to look at their parents and see that daddy loves mommy.
That's it. They don't really care about the rest.
No,
And I
they'll
think
know. They'll
that
need to
that
know
kind of
about
brings us.
your psychosocial marital issues. Like, that's not their
No,
business.
no, do they care, right? Like, we
No.
created these things. Kids don't care. But I think that gets us into one of the really interesting dynamics with regards to divine masculinity in pop culture, and black pop culture, is Buns and Sincere and Belly.
No, we're not
Okay.
gonna forget about Uncle Phil, but that's low hanging fruit. Right now,
No, that's low hanging
right
fruit,
now
right?
it's Buns and Sincere.
and even Uncle Phil, bro. Like, the fact that I never knew that Uncle Phil had such a eclectic, classically trained background in stage cinema, or
Hmm.
what am I trying to say?
Stage
Whatever
theater.
word.
Yeah.
In theater, right? Like, he
Yeah.
was extremely well trained, which is in a lot of ways where you see Will Smith as an actor rise, because
Hmm.
Uncle Phil constantly kept pulling him up in a lot of the episodes. Um, and I'm touching on this just because Manny brought it up, and I do want to let it breathe for you. But that one scene where Will's father leaves him, and Uncle Phil is there, and Will hits that moment of realization where it's like, it's on you now, brother. Like, you're not gonna ever get that connection that you want. You got to create it.
Yes.
And how real, and I don't mean just real for the show, but real life that was. If you've ever heard Will Smith or James Avery talk about that scene, like, that wasn't in script.
Yeah, the
Will
roller skate scene.
Yeah, man, he went
The infamous
off
roller
script.
skate scene.
And you know what I'm saying? It was real. And when James Avery realized it, he went with it. He leaned into allowing Will to have that moment literally on screen where he processed that. So absolutely James Avery. But Buns and Sincere, right? Two of my favorite characters, bro. I'm sorry. The decades that I grew up in, I can't. Like, DMX and Nas together.
When it rains, brothers get wet.
Brother.
When it rains, brothers get wet.
Right. Jeez, man. But the development of those two characters, I think, is extremely important. So first, I'll start with Sincere, right?
Okay.
Everyone's favorite. But the fact that Sincere wasn't necessarily a divine masculine.
Nope.
Because you look at a lot of situations where, and Sincere, to his credit, even said it, like, he would allow environments to entice Buns to do some crazy stuff simply because he knew Buns' code of loyalty was so strong.
Yep.
So he even articulated, was like, Buns hate to be messed with, but he hate when people mess with me even more.
Yep.
And he would like, yo, Black, you sitting over there with a 40, who still drinks 40? Like, he knows that's going to incite Buns to jump into the situation. He would kind of let it happen. And I think that started to come to a head as they started to get into, the troubles they had in the movie. But like, Sincere realized, like, oh, snap, like, this dude got a fuse that I can't turn off sometimes.
Nope.
And that swings the pendulum over to my man, my good brother, Buns, DMX, which I feel like that character was built for him.
More on that later.
But yeah,
more on that.
Buns was definitely a pure example of the transitional work that's needed to get to divine masculine. Right.
Exactly. His I think, and that's where his authenticity wins, because Sincere, like, was living below his potential for like 90% of the movie. And then, like, they say that I ain't got your mind right. He felt that heat, and he was like, let me quit playing games. I got a woman and a child. We need the GTFO. Whereas, like, Bundy really had no frame of reference for that, save for the times where, like, Sincere would try to put him on game, and he just wasn't ready to listen. Like, especially when they were in what was that, Omaha, Nebraska? Like, when they was trapping out there, like, with the red light scene. Omaha. Exactly. But I think, like, with Buns, the light shone, and then once he saw the light, he made that step by not pulling the trigger, which I think was dope. Whereas, like, Sincere was sort of like, okay, well, I'm treating this like my own personal playground. And then, fortunately enough, I was able to dodge the brunt of all that karma that I was really supposed to get for all the nonsense that they did with my life and my wife's life and my kids' life, and start a new life in a different place, which I'm happy for, but was kind of unfair to a certain extent, because he could have done better. But that's another take.
He could have. And
it would have been a short film had he did better.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been a totally different plot, right? But like, that construct of Sincere really didn't use his majesty to uplift himself or to save his brother, in essence, right? Like,
he was not his brother's keeper at all.
At all. And that's the part for me that as I've gotten older, because as a kid, I love Sincere. Like, I love Buns for the energy he made me feel, but I love Sincere for who I thought he was.
Yep.
But then,
and so does Sincere.
Ron was just like, yeah, right, exactly. He loves himself for who he thinks he is. But even at the dynamic of, like, what it took once, and I think it's important to speak about it, like what happened in Buns' life once it clicked. Like, it wasn't like no long elongated transition like it was with Sincere, where he's reading these books and he's building himself and he's this character.
But they're still trapping.
Nah, Buns was like, script, flip. We here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
riding. That's it. I don't care what I got to do for it. And that ending scene, and a part of my spirit wants a belly to, with Nas and DMX, post what happens after he doesn't shoot the minister.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially right now in today's environment, like I want that to be able to breathe in the atmosphere. But we're left to think about it because, in all honesty, that's kind of where it always ends. Anytime we see somebody buck the larger constructs and go, you know what I'm saying, go full black, go full blackness on it, it's that moment when they start to get quieter for whatever
Yep.
reason or whatever they were doing, however they were doing it. You know, they put a linchpin in it and it stops. A la the situation we're seeing right now with Nick Cannon, and we'll see, you know, what happens at this moment because this is the stage, right? We're in that
Okay.
moment where it's like, okay, we gonna see how this goes, brother.
Okay. So with that
But
being
yeah, man.
said, Nick Cannon.
Okay, now we gotta do it, huh?
Yeah, you said it. You said it.
Listen, man. As I said, and I will continue to say, I 100% rock with Nick Cannon and ride for Nick Cannon. Not simply because of any specific statement, but because
Mm-hmm.
of this man's commitment to his own personal development and how he exudes himself, right? Nick Cannon started this whole journey because most people are just getting hit today. But he started the
Mm-hmm.
whole journey getting into the space of like, what does it mean for me to be a sovereign individual?
Yep.
Before I am uh, uh, you know, beholden to any other rule or regulation. What are my rules and regulations? How do I show up in those places? Have I researched those things? Do I even know what I feel like, let alone what I think like? And
So
he's
maybe I
done
should
it
go
for
back
his,
to school. He built out his
maybe,
toolbox.
man, come on, man. Maybe I should go back to school, right? Maybe I should be very intentional about how I do it in terms of what I study, right? And because I got the money and the time, let's rock with it. And I think even the way that he speaks about his relationship, his marriage, his co-parenting ship with Mariah Carey, man, like he broke it down in the DJ Vlad TV interview once, where he was like, "We stayed away from lawyers when we finished this thing out."
Mm-hmm.
Right, and inherently looking at the power dynamic that existed, because like, be clear, Nick Cannon was not the prominent in that relationship.
No. And he was
He
like,
was
he was shameless in his admission of that. He was like, listen, like, you ain't even got my lady money. I ain't even got my lady money. Let's be clear.
I'm clear why I'm here. How about you?
Exactly.
And so that dynamic of like, he was sitting in a seat that most men never find themselves in, which is, I could take advantage of this woman's financial prowess for my own benefit if I wanted to in this divorce, right? And they ain't go that route. They
No,
take care of their kids the way they do it. We don't really hear much about it. There was
at
no big,
all.
long, drawn out divorce.
You don't
And to
even
the
see
best
his
of all
kids
of
in the
our knowledge,
media.
no. And when you do, it's like, picture, quick. They living their life the way they want to, man. And the fact that he has a whole nother seed, right? That he supports and honors that relationship, and all of his children, all of his family unit connects and collides the way it, in my opinion, should. I have no idea what goes on in their intimate spaces, and I don't care. But
Not my
with
business.
regards to like how they show up for one another, in regards to what they allow the outward world to see, they handle that very effectively. So, in my opinion, absolutely, Nick Cannon is a divine masculine. He exudes that energy, and shout out to him on his journey as he starts to pivot, you know, whatever he's trying to handle now with that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Yeah,
So let's see if we got any more James
things
Baldwin with
going
series
here.
on that.
Yeah, put Nikki's rebuttals with regards to James Baldwin.
Exactly. Nah,
Yeah,
man. I think we may have tapped into this one. I know we
let's
still
hit it.
have a list. Did you have any in
Yeah,
particular that you wanted to dive into before we close this thing out?
let's see. You know what? There was one that came up yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Rock from the TV show Rock. I think what's his is it something, his last name is Dunbar, but I can't remember his first name. You remember that show?
Mm, the show was
It was
Rock.
yeah, ROC.
Nope.
Wow. So it was a lower key one, but uh what was his name? Something Dunbar. Anyway, but the TV show Rock, right? The main character's name was Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Um And he was a father, married, lived in the hood for the most part. And in his house, he also had his father and his brother, his younger brother, living with him. And Rock was, constantly upset. There was a lot of angry black man in him,
Okay.
but it was more so angry because he knew how much the world just needed the world around him just needed to be built a certain way for everybody to have space, and it just wasn't able to be possible, right? So like trying to help his brother Joey get out of that house, right? Trying to deal with the fact that his dad was who he was and always in his business. Trying to deal with raising a daughter in the environments he was in. But there's one scene in particular where his brother Joey, who classic TV show construct, one brother is the sound one, the other brother is kind of like the mess
Not
up or the
exactly.
right, ain't solid. And Joey gets into it with some local gang members, and they come through the crib, and Rock stands tall. I mean, like on some look, young fellas, I understand what this is about, but let me point you in a different direction. We can make some stuff happen. And it was a beautiful scene that I even remember as a child watching this man who could have easily gotten killed and got his brother killed in that moment, did not have any weaponry on him, while I'm pretty sure these people did, just stand tall for what he believed in. And it wasn't like this moment was tangential from all of the other episodes that were relevant, but he was always this character. He was always willing to die for what he believed in. And I think that's, in honor to
To a
his
T.
name as a Rock. That's it. That's what it's
To a
about,
T.
man.
That's DMA.
That's it. That's what we here for. So now we get to that point.
We are. Hold on
We
one
got to close
second.
the
Let me
show
check.
down. See if
All
there's
right,
anything
cool.
left.
Yeah, no, I
Oh
don't see
God,
anything
man.
new.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats.
Chickens, elephants, pigs, and goats.
Thank y'all for riding with us on another episode of the Divine Masculine Activated. We will be back 2 weeks from now. What's up next?
Next is that's
My
5. Hold on.
my brother's keeper.
Is it my brother's keeper? Hold on. Let's verify.
I
Let's
think it
verify.
is.
It
Yeah,
is. Okay. So
Charles S. Dutton. Thank you, my brother Sean. Charles S. Dutton. Rock. That's the character name. Sorry, I needed to put that out.
okay. So now that's been noted. So yeah, my brother's keeper. 2 weeks from now. Um,
Hmm.
Same bad time, same bad channel. With this one, I do encourage people to look at. We can still use pop culture with it, but
Yeah.
I want to sort of dig in a bit deeper, and I challenge you to observe your personal relationships and see how
Hmm.
you are and or maybe are not your brother's keeper, and are your brothers keeping you, and in what way
Yeah.
are you being kept? Because that is a conversation that needs to be, I think, further explored. I found myself giving myself a lot of G checks in the way that I relate to a lot of the brothers in my circle. And
Mm.
I think maybe it's time we can get more crowd interaction. We definitely want to hear more from y'all on the social aspect leading up to it, but also as you approach and you're live on this event, feel free to drop whatever in that comment section because it's about to get a
To that.
lot more interactive as these episodes go through.
To that, man. Could not have said it better myself. Looking forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks. Same bad time, same bad channel. Divine Masculines out.
Chappelle Show, Robot Dude.
Stiff arm to the chick that's walking up on
Exactly, right? It's still live.
you. Yeah, man.
Manny.
Maestro, el jefe. You can cut us loose.
Manuel. Yeah, exactly. Cut it off. Check the private chat.
All right. I'm gonna go
All
ahead
right.
and log off from here. We should be good.
Exactly. Peace.
Yeah, good.